Right, good. A story about Rabbi Shmuel Mukis. Rabbi Shmuel Mukis was a Chassid of the first Rebbe of Chabad. And he was a genius, but he was also had a very good sense of humor. Very good sense of humor, to the degree that once there was a Farbringen or whatever it was, and he went outside of the Rebbe's room and he hung himself up like this. According to some opinions, he hung himself by his feet upside down. And everybody said, "What are you doing?" You know, the Chassid, he said, "Well, in front of a shoemaker's store, as he has hanging a wooden picture of a shoe, and in front of a fish store, they have a big picture of a fish. So the Rebbe makes Chassidim. I'm hanging a Chassid in front of his door." That's what. Okay, this story though is a little bit different. Once the Chassidim were sitting and they were making a big Farbringen, a big Chassidic gathering together, and usually when they made Farbringens, always when they made Farbringens, they would drink vodka, say l'chaim. But after drinking l'chaim, you should always eat something, at least put something into your mouth. And they ran out of whatever to eat, and it was like 2 a.m. And all the stores were closed. They didn't know what to do. So they had vodka, but they didn't have what to eat afterwards. So somebody said, "Well, go wake up the butcher." Jewish butcher, I mean, probably Chassid Chabad. It was in Lubavitch, it was Liazne. So it was in the time of the Alter Rebbe. So wake up and ask him if he has any meat that's already prepared, and we'll buy it. They gave him. And so one of the Chassidim went, and he knocked on the door. They woke up, and it happened to be that he had, according to one version, it was a liver, and according to another version, it was a lung. I go with the one that says for the liver because, anyway, you'll see why. So he knocked on the door. The Rebbe's the shochet, the one who slaughters the meat. His wife said, "It happens to be that I have a big piece of liver that I cooked, and that I can sell that to you." They said, "Oh, great, wonderful." So she sold it, and they came back and they put the liver on the table on this big sort of tray, and now they could continue the Farbringen. They could continue, drinking and singing. As soon as it was on the table, as the Shmuel Mukis picked it up with a tray, and he held the tray and he started running around the room. So they said, "Okay, enough. Put it down." And so he said, No, they put it down. They tried to catch him. "Enough, to put it down. You're wrecking the whole meeting we're making over here." No, and he ran. There was a window, and he threw it out the window. And from out the window into the sewage or whatever that was outside. And he completely disqualified the meat from the possibility of being edible. So the Hasidim really got angry. What did you do a crazy thing like that for? We put money into this thing, and you're wrecking Jewish money. You're just throwing it out the window. What are you doing? So they decided they're going to give him a punishment. Punishment. So they put him on the table to give him this punishment, and all of a sudden the butcher came running in and screamed out, "Don't eat the meat. Don't eat the meat." It came from a cow that's not kosher. It got mixed up. And what they do is when the meat a cow is slaughtered, so they take the lungs out of the cow, and which is a pretty easy thing to do. They just have to make a little cut. They cut the lungs up, and they check the lungs to see if there's some sort of a blemish or a hole or whatever on the lungs. It's complicated laws on the lungs. And then if the lung is not kosher, that means the whole animal is not kosher. But the lung is not attached to the animal. They take it out. So if you've slaughtered, let's say, a couple of cows, so you have to know which lung goes to which cow. And so sometimes, very rare, but it can get mixed up. And that's what happened over here. It got mixed up. And he realized that the lung that had been sold was not kosher. So it's not kosher. So this Shmuel Mukis saved everybody. So everyone said, "What was that? You're trying to be like Mr. Holy or something? You're like some sort of a spiritual." Now, the Hasidim very much did not like miracles. They did not like miracles. And even when the Rebbe made miracles, he did not like it that everyone should, treat it as though he was a miracle worker. The Rebbe did miracles. The miracles are sort of like a byproduct. It's like the Rambam writes that the Jewish people did not believe in God when they left Egypt because of the miracles that Moses did. Moses did these miracles because that's what the Jewish people needed. They had to have food, so he brought bread from heaven. They had to have water, so they brought it. It was like, why did they believe in God? Because God himself, they heard God speaking to Moshe. Look over there in the Rambam when it says, but miracles don't convince people to believe in God. If anything, they convince people to believe in the one who did the miracles, right? So that's not the goal of Judaism, even though, of course, there are miracles. Anyway, so they said, so you're doing miracles. You want to make yourself into a big person. They put him back on the table to give him punishment again. Punishment again. They call it giving patch. So he said, no. He said, it wasn't a miracle. I didn't do a miracle. I said, well, no, explain. So he said, the last time I went in to speak to the Rebbe, as the Rebbe said, gave me all sorts of advice, deep advice. And he said, anytime that there's something that you really like to do, you should know that you shouldn't do it. You really like it. You should know you shouldn't do it. You should check yourself. You shouldn't do it. And it says, good. He was a holy person. He was always working on himself and he didn't follow his urges. He said, when that meat was brought into the room, I had such an urge to eat from that meat. I had such a necessity. I realized if I didn't eat from the meat, I was going to faint. I would pass out. I really wanted, and it was kosher and it was good and I wanted to eat it. And it was all I could do when you put it on the table, just not to take a little nibble. And suddenly I remembered what the Rebbe told me, that anything that really want to do, that it's not right. I shouldn't do it. So I figured, listen, if I really wanted, I never in my life wanted to do something like I wanted to eat from that meat. It was necessary. I felt my whole life dependent on it, right? And I knew that it was wrong. There had to be something wrong with it. And I couldn't get that feeling out of my mind. The only way I could get rid of it was to throw the meat out the window, to just get it away from me. So what do we see from the story? We see from the story that sometimes when the Rebbe tells us to do things, they can be totally against what we think and what we feel, what we understand. But because the Rebbe said it, so it must be right. And because it's right, in this case, we're talking about turning from something bad. Because it's right, so we have to turn all of our attention from any doubts that we have or any lusts that we have or whatever, and we have to do this thing for Hashem. End of story. Good. And now it ends to this, and we will, 1 second. Have a good day with Mashiach. See you all tomorrow, 8:15 in the morning.